The cul-de-sac of Whispering Pines was the kind of neighborhood where the grass was measured with rulers and the silence was enforced by social pressure. At the center of this manicured universe lived Elias Thorne, a retired architect who had spent 30 years designing skyscrapers before retreating to this quiet corner of the world. Elias was a man of routine. He liked his coffee black, his jazz smooth, and his garden pristine. He was also the only black man in the neighborhood, a fact that shouldn't have mattered in 2026, but to Mrs. Beatrice Vane, the president of the Homeowners Association, it was a variable she hadn't accounted for. Beatrice, known behind her back as the Iron Gatekeeper, saw herself as the guardian of property values. To everyone else, she was the neighborhood Karen, a woman who used the HOA bylaws as a weapon and her clipboard as a shield. The departure. The conflict began on a Tuesday. Elias received a call that his sister in Savannah had fallen ill. Within 3 hours, he had packed a small suitcase, set his security system, and asked his neighbor, a college student named Leo, to keep an eye on the place. "Don't worry, Mr. Thorne," Leo said, leaning on his rake. "I've got you. If a leaf falls on your driveway, I'll blow it off before Beatrice can even click her pen." Elias smiled, thanked him, and drove away. He expected to be gone for a week. He didn't know that Beatrice Vane had been waiting for this exact moment. For months, Beatrice had been eyeing Elias' property. It sat on a double lot with a view of the lake. She had a vision for Whispering Pines that didn't include Elias' mid-century modern aesthetic or, more importantly, Elias. She had spent weeks forging a paper trail of unpaid dues, fabricated noise complaints, and unresolved structural violations that existed only in her imagination. The scheme. As soon as Elias' car turned the corner, Beatrice went to work. She wasn't just a busybody, she was a predator with a real estate license. She had convinced the HOA board, mostly retirees who were too intimidated to check the math, that Elias had abandoned the property and owed the association over $50,000 in compounded fines and emergency maintenance fees. Through a series of legal loopholes and a shady, non-judicial foreclosure process that she rushed through a cousin who worked at a local title company, Beatrice managed to put the house up for a private equity sale. The buyer was already lined up, a developer who promised Beatrice a kickback once the house was demolished and replaced with 2 smaller, higher-value units. 4 days into Elias' trip, a moving truck backed into his driveway. Leo, seeing the commotion, ran over. "Hey, what are you doing? Mr. Thorne isn't moved out." Beatrice stepped off the porch, clutching her clipboard. "The property has been reclaimed by the association due to gross negligence and long-standing delinquency." "Leo, go back to your studies. This is adult business." "Reclaimed? He's been gone 4 days," Leo yelled, pulling out his phone. "He's been gone from his obligations for years," Beatrice lied smoothly. "The papers are signed, the house is sold, the new owners want it cleared by sunset." The return. Elias was driving back earlier than expected. His sister's surgery had been a success and he was anxious to get back to his own bed. He pulled into Whispering Pines at 2:00 p.m. on a Friday. The first thing he saw was his mahogany front door standing wide open. The second thing he saw was his vintage Eames chair being loaded into the back of a generic white van. Elias parked his car in the middle of the street, blocking the moving truck. He stepped out, his heart hammering against his ribs. What is happening here? Beatrice appeared from the foyer looking like she had just won the lottery. "Mr. Thorne, you're back. This is awkward, but legally speaking, you're trespassing." "Trespassing?" Elias' voice was low and dangerous. "This is my home, Beatrice. I bought it in cash 10 years ago." "And you failed to pay your dues and assessments for 3, she replied, holding up a thick folder. "The HOA exercised its right to lien and sell. The sale closed 2 hours ago. You are no longer the owner of record." Elias looked at the men carrying his books. He looked at the dumpster at the curb filled with his late wife's gardening tools. The world felt like it was tilting. "You sold my house while I was at a hospital, without a court date, without a single phone call." "We sent notices," Beatrice said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I suppose they got lost in your cluttered mailbox. You have 10 minutes to gather your personal essentials before I call the police to escort you off the premises." Elias didn't yell, he didn't plead. He took a deep breath and reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a weapon, he pulled out his phone. Beatrice, Elias said, I designed the security systems for the state treasury. Did you really think I didn't have cameras inside? Beatrice stiffened. Security footage doesn't change a legal sale. No, Elias agreed, but it recorded you entering my house 3 days ago before your sale was finalized and taking a small velvet box from my bedroom dresser, the one containing my wife's engagement ring. Beatrice's face went the color of curdled milk. I was inventorying assets. That's called grand larceny, Elias said. And while you were busy playing realtor, you forgot one very important thing about this house. The collapse. And what is that? She sneered, trying to regain her footing. The title isn't in my name, Elias said. Beatrice laughed. I checked the records, Elias. It's held by Thorn Properties LLC. We sued the LLC and won a default judgment. Elias stepped closer, his shadow falling over her. Thorn Properties LLC is a subsidiary of a charitable trust managed by the Sterling Holloway Group. I am the occupant, but the trust owns the land, and the head of that trust isn't a retired architect. It's my son, Marcus. As if on cue, a black SUV pulled up behind Elias' car. A man in a sharp suit stepped out, followed by two men in windbreakers that read FBI. 10 minutes, Beatrice, Elias said, glancing at his watch. That's how long it took for the sale to collapse once the bank flagged your cousin's wire transfer. Marcus Thorne walked up the driveway looking less like a son and more like a reckoning. He held a tablet in his hand. Mrs. Vane, I'm Marcus Thorne. I'm the chief legal counsel for the Sterling Group. My father called me 3 hours ago when his alarm system sent a prolonged entry alert to my office. Beatrice tried to speak, but her mouth was dry. There was a delinquency. There was no delinquency, Marcus interrupted. We have the canceled checks for every HOA fee for the last decade. What we do have is evidence of mail fraud, wire fraud, and equity skimming. My firm has been tracking this developer you've been working with for 6 months. We just didn't know who their inside person was in this neighborhood. He turned the tablet around. It showed a recorded Zoom meeting between Beatrice and the developer discussing how to push out the undesirable element to make room for the new units. You recorded me, Beatrice shrieked. The developer's assistant recorded you, Marcus said. He was a whistleblower looking for a deal with the feds. He gave us everything 10 minutes ago in exchange for immunity. The men in the windbreakers stepped forward. Beatrice Vane, you're under arrest for residential mortgage fraud and grand larceny. The aftermath. The neighborhood watched in stunned silence as the iron gatekeeper was led away in handcuffs. The moving men, realizing they were working for a criminal, quickly began unloading Elias' furniture back into his house, apologizing profusely. Leo ran over, helping Elias carry his favorite chair back into the living room. I tried to stop them, Mr. Thorne. I called the cops, but she showed them a pile of legal papers and they said it was a civil matter. It's okay, Leo, Elias said, his voice finally shaking a little. You did your best. I knew she was a shark, I just didn't know she was a stupid one. By sunset, the white van was gone, the dumpster was hauled away, the house was quiet again. Elias sat on his porch with Marcus. The sun was dipping below the lake, casting long, golden shadows across the lawn. The neighborhood felt different, lighter, as if a heavy shroud had been lifted. You really had the engagement ring on camera? Marcus asked, sipping a glass of water. No, Elias admitted with a small, tired smile. I took that with me to Savannah. I didn't want to leave it in an empty house, but I knew her well enough to know she'd go looking for it. Her face told me everything I needed to know. Marcus laughed. You always were a better architect of people than buildings, Dad. The resolution. The great HOA scandal changed Whispering Pines forever. The board was dissolved and replaced by people who actually cared about the community rather than the height of the hedges. The developer was indicted, and the sale of Elias' house was declared null and void by a judge the following Monday morning. Beatrice Vane lost her house to pay for her legal defense, a poetic irony that wasn't lost on the residents. She ended up in a facility that had much stricter rules than her HOA, and she didn't get to choose the color of the curtains. Elias remained in his home. He still liked his coffee black and his jazz smooth, but now he spent a little more time on his porch, greeting his neighbors. He realized that the best way to protect a home wasn't with cameras or LLCs or high-end locks. It was by making sure everyone knew who lived there so that when a stranger or a Karen tried to take it, the whole neighborhood would know that it wasn't for sale. As Elias looked out at his garden, he felt a deep sense of peace. The title of his home was back in his hands, but the spirit of his home was stronger than ever. The scam had collapsed in 10 minutes, but the community that rose from the ruins would last for years.